You're listening to Classic CDs. The year is 1988, and it's the Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1. The closing track is End of the Line. Here's Jeff.
I think, well, George actually came up with the idea for it, like the main chord sequence, and we all contributed words to it. And little bits of the song were put in by other people, like I think Tom and Bob put a few of the chords in as well. But George came up with the initial idea of it.
Just the ching, chinga, ching. I mean, it's back to my roots, skiffle, really. But also, I mean, I was trying to think of, well, that's the good thing about when there's other people in the group, you know, and I was trying to think of a song that would feel a bit like something of a Bob Dylan tune. So naturally, I got on D, the chord D. All the guitar players will know that. And you go ching, chinga, ching, chinga, ching. And, you know, and it was sort of a bit like where I started, really, with the old skiffle kind of stuff, really. And so that was that, really. And then we just, you know, said, here's a bit of one. And then, it, you know, after half an hour, we knocked it into the shape and wrote the words.
The end of the line and the end of the album, and the end of the Traveling Wilburys, at least that lineup. That track was the second single, but by the time they came to make the video, there were only 4 Wilburys left. Roy Orbison had died barely a month after the release of the album. Here's Tom Petty.
It was very odd to not have Roy there because we had become a group, and probably still are. But we, you know, it just suddenly someone's not there. But I think he was there in a lot of senses, that we could feel him there. But it was a little sad because we had just, his funeral I think was only about a day before the video. But we just tried to, you know, go on and hope that, you know, we did him justice, and it turned out to be a curious song for the next single, you know, the end of the line. But I think you write these songs, and then it's funny how events come down, and later on when you hear the song, it can mean so much more than it did when you were writing it. But yes, it was and still is unusual to have him gone, but I think Roy's okay for some reason, wherever he is. I've always felt that if anybody was ever prepared to leave, Roy was, you know. He was a very deep man, and he had lived a lot, and he was a very wise man. But mostly I just miss him, just to hang around with him, you know, because I used to see him every day. When we were making Full Moon Fever, we did a lot of it in the same studio. He even sang on one track with us, Zombie Zoo. And we used to do background vocals, me and him and Jeff Lynne, and we called ourselves the Trembling Blenders. And we did some on his album. And then we even moved to another studio, and just by chance, it turned out Roy was just across the hall, and Mike Campbell, the Heartbreakers guitar player, was producing the tracks that Jeff didn't. So, and then the Heartbreakers were all over there. If you can picture me on my own in one studio making my solo album, and then across the hall he's got the Heartbreakers and Roy Orbison. So it was really just everybody in and out of all the doors, and I'd be working on something and I'd feel a little tap on my shoulder, and there'd be Roy, and he'd go, "That's great, Tommy. It's great." You know, he called me Tommy. He's one of the only people I've ever let call me Tommy. But he was a great man, and I'm so glad to see the success he's having, you know. And I know he would have just been thrilled by it all. But I think Roy went out on top, and I'm sure he knew that. I think the last conversation I had with him was a couple of days before he died on the phone, and he was just so thrilled that the Wilburys had gone platinum, and he was just, "Isn't it great? It's great," you know. And so it's great that he got that album done. He finished, you know, so many things in his life. I love all those guys, you know. We were all pretty good friends, and we just enjoyed each other's company, really. At times it seemed like the album was just an excuse to all hang around with each other, really, but we're very proud of it, you know. It came off It's a nice, honest album, I think.
You know, there's a lot of things that you can do when you sit down and think about it. When it comes down to the physical time of getting everybody involved, you know, 5 people who all live in different parts of the world and who all have their own lives to lead, you know, it's sort of a miracle that we did the album and got the video and all that done. Because, I mean, just the idea of that, I mean, it's just these people around a microphone singing the tune, really. But in a way, it's amazing because the chances of having that again is very remote. You know, it's like, it's a unique little thing, even though it's still only a pop video, but it's unique, and maybe more so because I realised you couldn't put it together if you tried. It was totally the accident, or we had some sort of creative astrology happening that weekend, you know. The reason I was in LA at that time was because I'd just done, that's right, I'd just done some promo stuff for the record company. I'd gone to Canada and I went to LA because I had to go and do a video for one of the singles off of Cloud9. So if I hadn't have been there doing that video, then it wouldn't have happened. But then again, you know, if I hadn't got born, none of this would have.
And a final word on the Traveling Wilburys from Jeff Lynne.
For some reason, it was really easy, you know. It's because there's so many people with input, you know, all these writers, they're all like world-famous songwriters. And so that's why it was easy, really. And there was nobody going, well, I want my bit longer than that, you know, you can have that bit, but I want to sing this bit. It was like, who fancies singing that bit there, you know, and we'd always probably go, Roy would sound great there, you know, because obviously he would sound good on anything. And Roy would have a go, you know, and sing it. It was just brilliant because there was no, you know, angles on it, you know, it was just like everybody trying to make this record, which was great.
Classic CDs is devised and produced by Roger Scott and John Pidgeon. Our special thanks to Jeff Lynne, George Harrison and Tom Petty.